being used. My role here would be like a facilitator, like someone who can give a recap of things. So as I was preparing for today's session and I was like having lunch, I was eating something. I was thinking about a burger and I was thinking what would happen if I said I wanted a burger in front of a wall, at a petrol pump, or at a restaurant. So what do you think would happen? The chat box is open. You can type in your answers, or if you'd like, you can also unmute yourself.
Uh, can you please repeat once more, Toastmaster Alpha?
Sure, sure. I hope I am clearly audible, right?
Yeah, you are audible.
Great. So I was just thinking, what would happen if I said I wanted a burger in front of a wall, at a petrol pump, or at a restaurant?
Alpha, you will only get a burger when you ask for it at a restaurant, not at a petrol pump or in front of a wall.
Yep, true. Okay, we have Vaishali has also said I wouldn't get it. So that's true. I will only get it at a restaurant. I won't get it in front of a wall. And of course, I won't get it at a petrol pump. So what do you see is happening? What do you think is happening here, right? In this scenario or in this context?
You are asking for the right thing at the wrong place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right thing at the wrong place. How about others? What do you think is happening? Okay, yeah, we have Lukesh saying context setting. Yep. Anything else that comes to your mind? Others who are in the room with us? What is happening here? I'm asking for a burger in front of a wall, at a petrol pump, or at a restaurant. Okay, we have Abhishek saying right place. And anything else? If you'd like to share, chat box is open. You can also unmute yourself. Not doing the right thing? Yeah, Vaishali says not doing the right thing. Absolutely. Would you agree that there is some kind of communication happening? Yeah, okay, Rashi says I'm confused as to where I would get the burger. Yeah, they'll probably give me a petrol instead of burger at a petrol pump. So would you agree that there is some kind of communication that is happening? Yeah, the wall won't respond, obviously. Unless it's a magic wall, I suppose. So would you agree that there is some sort of a communication that's happening between myself and the context and things that are going around? Okay, Lucas says yes. How about others? Yep, okay. Kaveri, Abhishek, Vaishali, yep. So there's some sort of communication happening. So when I'm saying I want a burger at the petrol pump, I'm still communicating, but not at the right place, not at the right time. That's not the place to get a burger. So the context is absolutely wrong. If I'm speaking in front of a wall, the wall obviously cannot respond. So that's not a communication unless it's a monologue where I'm just speaking to myself. The right place would be at a restaurant where if I say I want a burger, maybe I'll get it, or maybe I won't. Or if they've run out of all the buns, that's a possibility. However, something is happening, a communication is happening. So a communication is like a bridge. And whenever we give speeches at our club, virtual setting, or anywhere, it's obviously a form of communication where there is you and there's someone else. So right now, I'm speaking a little bit more and you're also speaking. I hope we'll be having a lot of interaction. So this is a communication and there's a bridge in between. I'm standing at one edge, you're standing at the other edge. If you're speaking to anyone, if you're communicating with your friend, you're at the other edge, your friend is at the other edge. So when we're speaking, when we're giving a public speaking, when we're doing a public speaking activity, or when we're giving a speech, it's a very similar kind of context. There are two things. There's you and there is your audience, and there is your speech, which is the bridge, which is the connecting portion between you and the audience. So you are at the other edge, your audience is at the other edge. So realizing that there are two parties in a speech makes our life so much easier. Now you can realize, you can ask questions like, what does the audience want? Or what do you want to tell to the audience? When I was saying I want a burger at the petrol pump, it was obviously the wrong place because I wouldn't get it. In front of a wall, well, the wall is really not an audience. But when you know that you have an audience in front of you, you will receive a lot of answers to your questions about what kind of speech you have to give. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box whenever it comes up, and we'll try and answer it as we go ahead. We do have a Q&A at the end as well. So now you know that you have an audience when you're speaking. A question that obviously comes up is, what do you know about the audience? So imagine you are sitting at the other edge of the bridge and you're about to give a speech. So what do you know about the audience? What would you normally think? Or what kind of questions would you ask about the audience? Again, the chat box is open, and if you'd like to unmute yourself, that option is there too. So just imagine you are supposed to give a speech at your club. So what do you know about the audience? So what kind of questions would you like to ask to help you prepare your speech better? Okay, we have Anup saying relevant questions. Yeah, we have Vaishali, which age group so that the topic would be relevant? Yeah, I think demographics is one of the first things that comes to our mind. A young audience might be a little more informal. A formal audience might want something else from us, right? So that in itself already gives us a lot of ideas about how our speech should go. Age group might give us a style of speech. Should we make it a little more casual, a little less casual, or more formal, right? So these are the questions that, okay, we have Karan, you're saying, what is the audience thinking? Yeah, that's a good way to, so the audience, the kind of audience that we're speaking actually helps us solve a lot of our problems as a speaker. Some other things that I'd like to add is, which has already come up in our chat, is what does the audience need? So when I'm going to a conference, what is my need? What is it that I'm expecting from the speaker there? Maybe the speaker is going to speak about how to write better or how to take care of your pets. It could be anything. So it depends on the needs of the audience. It also has expectation. Yeah, Abhishek just said formal, informal audience. So does your audience expect you to come up in a suit, for example? So there's a kind of expectation, which kind of helps us provide content and kind of steers a direction when we're preparing for a speech. There's also learning styles of your audience. You may have heard that some audience are more visual, some are auditory, some are more kinesthetic, where you have to do a demonstration and an audience understands better. So that's some of the ways of understanding the audience. Now, the interesting thing is, we've all been audiences, right? Can I see some thumbs up, some emojis, some icons so that I know you are here with me, even though I may not be able to see you. Yeah, okay, great. So we've all been audiences, which means we all know a little bit about what audiences like, or what you like, or what we like in a speech. So let's do a small activity. I would like you to go to slido.com, and I would like you to type in the answers to the question, what would you say makes an awesome speech? We all have experienced speeches. We are all audiences at one point or the other. So I would like you to answer, what makes an awesome speech according to your experience as an audience. So how do you do is open up a browser and go to slido.com. Something will pop up and you can just type the code speech, and then the question will pop up and you can type in your answers. Code for Slido is hashtag it's speech. Nivanshi is raising hand. Would you like to say something, or do you have a confusion?
I have done slido.com. Yeah. And now I have to join as a participant writing the code.
Yeah. Yes.
What
The
is
code
the
is
code?
speech. Speech.
Okay, speech.
If anybody's having any issue, please feel free to type in the chat, or yeah, you can unmute yourself as well. So we have somebody who said write content. That's interesting. Okay, there's one more content. I want to focus on content. How about others? Let's try to have unique answers. If somebody else has already answered the question that the point that you were thinking about, let's try to think of a new answer so that this board is going to be filled with unique ideas. Okay, flow of speech. You have humor, we have story, connection with the audience. Wow, all of them are like great aspects of an amazing speech. Okay, call for action. Let's have a little some more. Only 5 people have answered so far, and I think we are about 22 people. So yeah, at least 15, 16 answers. Nivanshi, I think somebody's raising their hand. Yeah, Nivanshi, do you have any issue?
No, just raise your hand as you said that. Just respond means that people are listening. So I just raised that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so connect with audience is like probably the biggest one. The big word cloud that has come up. Okay, there's voice modulation, stage presence, energy, a speech that is well structured. Okay, pauses, delivery, confidence. Wow, there's a lot of things that we have experienced as an audience. We have 11 answers. A few more. Let's keep going. Audience engagement. Yeah, I mean, I think like audience, connecting with the audience and content so far is the biggest highlight. Any more unique answers that you'd like to throw in? Yeah. Oh, someone just typed in catchy statements. Okay, well dressed. Yeah, true. Okay, so top 3 so far is audience, content, delivery. Interesting. Anything else? Okay, we just have body language pop up and real life examples. Yeah, true. Something else has come, I can see. Okay, the word cloud is filling in with a lot of answers. Oh, suspense. Yeah, everybody loves a good suspense. What's going to happen? Like there is anecdotes. Yeah, feed their biases. That's a very interesting point. I'd maybe at the end of the session we can talk a little bit more about that if we have time. Whoever wrote that answer. Okay, there's conclusion, authenticity. Yep. So we have like 14 answers. So these are all the answers that our dear audiences are giving in. It comes from our experience as an audience. So these are all of the things that we can think about whenever we are delivering a speech or writing a speech. Now, it is fair to say nobody can tick all the boxes. Probably not even the best of the best speakers. We say the biggest room is room for improvement. So it's very rare to find someone who will be able to tick all of the boxes. But our hope and our goal at Toastmasters, and every time we give our speeches, is to tick as many boxes as we would like to. So there might be a group of things that you want to ace in a particular speech. It could be delivery, it could be content, it could be connecting with the audience. So it's a good idea to make a list of things that you would like to achieve in a particular speech whenever you're giving, because it's very difficult to ace all of it at the same time. So these are all the things that our dear audience has said that makes an awesome speech. And I'm sure there's a lot more other ideas that are going on behind your head. And these are the things that come from our experiences, which means we can channelize all of the ideas that come to us whenever we are in the audience seat and use it whenever we have to give a speech or deliver a speech, because it's a bridge and you can walk through either ways. So whenever we're preparing for a speech, how we feel as an audience or who our audience might be is a very interesting point of entry about what we are going to speak or how we're going to speak. It kind of solves a lot of problems, because I realize that a lot of us, a lot of even my fellow club members struggle with what to speak about. That is a very, very potential problem that we all face. Now that we have asked question about what do we know about our audience and how do we feel when we are an audience, the next question to attempt would be, what do you know about you? Now, this sounds like a philosophical question. It could be a philosophical question as well. But right now, for this workshop, let's stick to the idea that what do you know about you as a speaker, or what do you know about your speech that you're particularly working upon? As you are moving through your journey in Toastmasters or in any kind of public speaking, there are a few things you'll come to realize about yourself. Maybe you'll come to know what your strengths are, or maybe you'll realize what your weaknesses are, or maybe you'll realize what is it that you really want to say. There are few themes or topics that you really, really, really are passionate about, or sometimes there are some expertise that you would like to share with your fellow members and friends. These are all good places to think about your speech or think about how you can take it to the next project. So for the rest of for the rest of the session today, we'll be focusing a little about what we know about ourselves and what we know about our speech, so that we can draft the most awesome speech that we can for a given project. So there are three things that I'd like to know about myself or my speech whenever I'm preparing a speech. That is speech ideas, the message, the objective, and finally the structure of the speech. There are so many other things to focus on as well, but these are the key things that I usually like to start and then branch out into other things. So let's start with speech ideas. How many of us here struggle with coming up with ideas for a speech? Maybe a raise of hand, or maybe a yes or no on the chat box. Yeah, I can see a few hands raising. Yeah, if possible, dear audience, please do turn on your video. I'd definitely like to see you, if possible, if you're feeling good about that. Okay, yeah, we have a lot of answers coming. Yes, yes, and then we also have a few hand raises. Now, can you please lower your hands? And the next question would be, how many of us here feel as if we have so many things to say that you're like, I want to say this, I want to say this, I want to say this. I'm like, I can't choose what I'm going to say. Do you feel that way? Yeah, okay, I have one hand raised. Yeah, we have Kashish who says yes. Yeah. So these are both like two extremes. One extreme, you don't know what you're going to talk about. Other extreme, there's like so many things in your head and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to say, which are both a situation of challenge whenever we are trying to, prepare for a speech, because usually a speech at Toastmasters is 5 to 7 minutes. How many things can you say? So let's do a tiny little exercise to kind of see if some pattern emerges from your interest, ideas, and expertise. So can you get a quick notebook or anything, if you'd like to type digitally, that works as well. So let's note down 3 things that you think you are an expert at. So this is an exercise to generate some speech ideas. So please write 3 things that you think you are an expert at. That could be from your education, that could be from the experiences that you've been getting throughout. 3 things that you think you are an expert at. Just write it down. And it's okay if you don't want to share it with anyone. So you can just, this is a personal exercise. So 3 things that you think you're an expert at. Now the next exercise is 3 things you really want to speak about. So this could be regardless of whether you are related to that thing that you want to speak about or not, but 3 things that you really want to speak about. So for example, you can say, I want to speak about climate change because I'm really, really, passionate about the environment, regardless of whether you work in the environment sector or not. So it could be associated with what you do. It might not be associated with what you do. It's absolutely okay. So 3 things you think you're an expert at, 3 things you really want to speak about, and 3 things you are curious about. So the next question is 3 things you're curious about. So are you curious about how bacterias work, for example? There's no limit to this. Go as crazy as you want to go. Are we good? Are we following through? Can I see a few hand raises or reactions or emojis? Okay. Yeah, I think I can see Eddie raising with a hand raise. Okay, yeah. Akanim says yes. If you have any confusion, please do type in the chat box or feel free to unmute yourself. So 3 things. So this is an exercise that can go on and on and on. You can write about 3 things that you learned in your life, 3 happiest moment of your life. It doesn't have to be 3. It can also be 5, 10, 15. For the sake of the time limit that we have today, I've just chosen 3 things, and 3 things makes it 9 things, I guess. Yeah, it's 9. So when you look at this, the things that you've just written down on your piece of paper or wherever you've written it, it might give you a pattern as to what is it that you would like to speak about. So it might give you an idea for the next project. Now, if you are doing a project from your particular path, some projects, some ideas might fit in, some might not. But this is like an idea bank that you're generating so that whenever you want to speak about something, you don't face a blank page. Now that you know there are things you're curious about, there are things you really want to speak, so kind of see what kind of pattern is emerging. There might be a connection between more than one of those things, or there might be, you can trace multiple things. So you can write 3 things that you 3 lessons that you've learned, or 3 ideas that you had while you're walking on the road. So you can go as deep and as varied as you want. So these are just prompts to get the juices in your mind flowing. If there are a lot of things in your mind, these things can help you isolate a few variables and see a pattern as to, okay, maybe these 2 things make sense. I might want to talk about this in my next speech, or I might want to explore this for so and so particular project from my path. So this is a way to not be standing in front of a blank sheet of paper where you're like, oh, I either don't know anything, or oh, I have so many things to say. So whenever you're preparing for your next speech, you can just have a look at the things you've written down, and maybe it can give you an idea as to what you can speak about. So the next thing that I'd like to know whenever I'm giving a speech or whenever I'm presenting something is, what is the message that I want to give out? And what is the objective of this particular speech that I'm giving? So if you're giving a speech from your particular path, in the pathways, they usually already have a predefined objective that says these are the things that you need to do, which makes it a little bit easier for us, because there could be a lot of things we'd like to say, but the guideline, the manual kind of gives us a direction. And we can always add in a little color to that and go around it, add a little more creativity. But having a message and having an objective is like a direction for our speech. It kind of keeps everything together. So among the 3 things that you've chosen, the things that you've just written, can someone share if you can spot a potential speech project or a theme for your next speech? Let me share that again. So among the things that you've written, you don't have to share everything. If you feel like, oh, this is something that I want to talk about in my next speech, would you like to share that? You can type it in the chat box. It can be a topic that you've discovered, or it can be a theme that you'd like to explore. Is there anything that has emerged so far?
Yes, in my next speech, I will going to speak upon sacrifices towards addiction.
Okay. Thank you, Rajesh. Sacrifices towards addiction. Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds interesting. Anybody else would like to share? If something has emerged when you were like doing that exercise, you're writing 3 things. And any patterns that have emerged, or maybe you want to talk about climate change or environment or pets or time management even. If anything hasn't emerged so far, no worries. You can keep trying and you can keep. Okay, yeah, we have Rajesh saying punctuality. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. uh Excuses about the background noise. The local elections are coming up, so that's just something that's happening in the background here. How about others? Would anybody like to share? Okay, Anushka says motivation versus discipline. Yeah, that could be an interesting theme topic that you can explore. Now, if a particular apologies about the background noise, it should be good in some time. So now that you've found out a theme or idea to explore, would you like to think about what kind of message you'd like to give, or what kind of objective you might want to fulfill? Your project will obviously already have an objective that says, yeah, so when you're doing this level, you have to do tick these boxes. But other than that, you're still allowed to explore your own objectives as well. So yeah, and Ivanshi said respect towards elders. Okay, that's also another interesting point. So what kind of message would you like to give? Okay, Kaveri says towards some changes in audience's minds.
Yeah, the mindset which we have as young people today, it is not enough to respect our elders. That what we see generally in society. That the more we are getting bigger and advanced towards the changes which are happening in our culture, we are not accommodating the elders into it, and we are not being as respectful as we should be towards our elders. So that is the one message that I would like to give to the audience, that at whatever stage in life we are, whether we are successful or a failure or a loss, or at any point, we must respect our elders because their blessings can make a change in our life.
You are muted, Nivanshi. Was there something you wanted to add further?
So I was muted.
Yeah, just for
Okay.
the last like maybe 2 3 words.
Oh, okay. I was saying that the blessings of elders can make a change in our life. So it's very important that if you want their blessing, we must respect them, obey their orders, and if not, we want to obey their orders, we should at least explain them. Then why are we saying no instead of yes?
Sure. You'd have like to give. We have Abhishek shares a message that be assertive. Yeah, that's the short and catchy one. So what a message does is it gives us a direction. So now that you know what is it that you want to speak about, you can go and find stories and anecdotes. We noticed that a lot of stories and anecdotes popped up in our word cloud about awesome speeches. So if that is the message that you want to give, then maybe you can find stories from your life or others around you, and then you can put it inside your speech. So what the message does is kind of consolidates the things that you want to say, and now you know that you don't have to say everything because there's not unlimited time, but it helps you filter out what are the stories that you should share or what are the facts that you would like to share. So when Nivanshi was talking about respecting elders, something that really struck me was maybe one aspect of could be how can technology be friendly for elders, for example, and it's something that just I began thinking when she was speaking. So when you're writing your speech, it could go in many directions, and it's absolutely okay. You can start with one message, and by the end of the speech, when you're writing and you're thinking and you're drafting and correcting, you might feel like, no, this is not the right message, I want to change it slightly, which is again absolutely okay. Sometimes you have stories and you feel like a message emerges out of that stories. And sometimes you have a message, you have an endpoint, and then you have to go and find stories that kind of make sense or fit into that message. So it can be either ways. So if you feel like you don't have a message right now, it's absolutely okay. You can keep filtering through, you can keep finding, exploring themes, and you might find something unique and beautiful and powerful from your life stories as well. So it's all about exploration. Rajesh says, you'd like to give message to my speech that sacrifices. Rajesh, would you like to read that out for us?
Yes, yes.
We cannot hear you.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible now.
Yeah, earlier you had asked like what kind of message you would like to give through your speech.
Yeah. Would you like to read that part?
Yeah. I have written like that. Uh, After sacrifices towards our addiction, if our life is going all right with moral values, then also sacrifices should be remain forever.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for sharing. So now what you can do is you can find stories or facts or ideas that revolve around this message. So it becomes easier, right? It's narrowing down. We start from a big funnel and we're like going deeper and deeper and deeper so that we have one point that we can end with, or one point that we can have the audience take away from our speech. We have Abhishek who says be assertive. Abhishek, would you like to add something to it?
Actually, in the professional life or in the personal life, if we want something from other person, then we have to develop trust with that person, and we have to be empathize with that particular situation, and we have to be assertive to make our life easier and to make that work easily in our favor.
So that's the message that you want to leave the audience with, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what that gives is it gives you a direction as to where to move, what kind of stories or what kind of ideas to insert to build credibility as a speaker. So a message kind of gives us a direction, and it's okay if a message starts out as a generic one. If you watch or listen to the world championship speeches, everybody is kind of inspiring the audience and kind of telling them not to give up. But the trick is they're saying that in a unique way that only they could have said. So it's okay to start with a generic idea and then boil it down further and further, try to find exactly what is it that I want to say eventually. So it's a long process. You might not come up with a very unique message or a very like a message that nobody else has seen. It's okay to start like generic and then slowly boil down. Your stories, your anecdotes, the ideas that you've generated will all kind of help you find a message that is yours, in a way that is in your voice, in a very unique manner. So it's a process. It's not something that emerges like I want to have a great message. Then it's not going to come like that. It's a process that keeps filtering, and it also comes with experience as a person and also as a speaker. So it's interrelated. So now let's move to the third aspect, which is the structure when you're giving a speech. I am a huge fan of speech structures. I like to have a lot of things organized in a particular way. It just helps me look at my speech better and helps me refine it, and kind of find those areas where I need to work a little more or kind of edit or throw things out. So when you're looking at the structure of your speech, that there are various kinds of structures that you can use. There are like so many of them. And the most important thing I think about structures is to do a lot of practice. So whenever you're giving speeches in your club setting, try to use different kinds of structure in one speech, in a different speech, and see how it works. Because it's a lot about hit and trial. What works for one particular speech might not work for another speech. And when you're deciding about structures, you'll be thinking about the opening, about the conclusion, about the body of your speech. What are the things that you want to add? How many stories would you like to add? For example, Abhishek was saying he wants to talk about how to be assertive. So when he's talking about his speech structure, thinking through, you might have to think, how many stories or how many points do I want to explain? Is two enough, or is one enough, or do we need to keep four or five? It all depends on how you're arranging your entire speech. Sometimes one single story is enough. Sometimes three are enough. Sometimes two also work really well. So it all depends on how you're going to structure your speech and how you're going to have an opening. Are you going to start with a fact, like maybe a shocking fact that says something? Or are you going to open with something that happened to you? Are you going to take the audience right in the middle of the action where something is happening or you're witnessing something? So these are all openings, and these all fall into the structure of the speech. Some popular speech structures that I've seen and I also like to use is a comparison one where there is then and now. Something was like this, then and now it's like this. So you kind of flip the situation and show it to the audience. The other structure, speech structure, is it could be problem and solution. So there is a lot of problem in the first half of your speech, and then you are providing solutions to all of these problems. This is also a structure for pitches, where ideas, where you show a lot of problem audience is facing, and then you say, oh, tada, this is so and so product and it's going to solve that problem. So it's often used in pitches as well. And there's another speech structure called what is, what could have been. It's called spark lines. And it's a speech structure that was explored by Nancy Duarte. It's also there in her TED talk. You can have a look where she analyzes different kinds of speeches, speech structure, and then provides a structure where you're talking about things as they are right now and where they can be in the future. So it's a combination of where things are and where things can be, and it prolongs throughout the speech, and then you have an ultimate conclusion at the end. These are some popular speech structures. There are different kinds of speech structures. If you're using a story, stories also have their own kind of structure. So a popular story structure is a hero's journey, where a hero goes into a journey. So a hero is at their house, and then something happens. Maybe a evil villain comes into their village or their town, and then they have to save their town and go and find a magical power. So he or she goes out into the journey to find that magical power. So that's called hero's journey. Harry Potter, if you've watched the movies, you've read the books, Harry Potter is based on the hero's journey. The Star Wars movies is also based on the hero's journey, where a hero takes a full circle journey and comes back home and solves a particular problem. So that's a structure for stories. If you're talking about, and you can use the structure even in your personal, like in your presentations and in your official speeches as well. Even though it's stories, even though it's a structure that's particularly used in literature, it's something that can be used in speeches as well. Anup has a question. TED Talk. I don't remember the name of the TED Talk, but the speaker is Nancy Duarte. It's very interesting. So it's an interesting TED Talk. You can definitely have a look. So those were the three things we talked about. Talked about speech ideas. So these are all the aspects that you can explore as a speaker or as a presenter. And when you're exploring these ideas, do try to remember that there is an audience somewhere there, and that it's a balance between you as a speaker and what the audience wants. So, but when you're exploring your ideas, it's okay if you do not think about the audience and the audience comes in later on in the picture as well. So, how to explore, we talked slightly about how to explore ideas for your speeches, how to find ideas or how to develop a pattern. And if you're writing the stuff down, you can continue doing that. And I'm sure a pattern will emerge where you'll find ideas about what is it that you really want to speak. So it also depends on the experiences that we're going in a particular time period. All of that also affects what kind of speeches or what kind of things we're interested in. And we also slightly talked about how message can be a guiding anchor for whenever we're writing speeches. It can help us decide which stories or which anecdotes, which facts we're going to keep, which one we are not going to keep for a particular speech. About objective, if you read through the project manuals in your particular path, in the particular project, that could also be very, very beneficial to understand what is it that the speech has to be about. So it's also another guiding force behind whenever you're writing your speech. Finally, we also talked about structure, and do feel free to explore different kinds of structure in your speech. Speech is part art, part science. So these are some of the things that people have explored and I've explored. The art part is where you go out and try what works for you and do not use what doesn't work for you, and kind of see how it mixes up in your speech, because you are a unique person and your speech is definitely bound to be unique as well. So whenever you're thinking about what you can do as a speaker, do think about what your audience wants, or what kind of audience is going to be, because that could also help you give a lot of ideas for your speech. It can streamline your speech, it can give you ideas, it can also prove to be a guiding force. All of this will only be possible if we give ourselves the permission to be messy. So when you're writing a speech, it's okay if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to be. It's okay if you're lost and you're like, oh, I don't know where this is going. Feel free to reach out to your mentors and give yourself permission to wander around. There were so many speeches where I've written, or I was starting, I was thinking, oh, this is where this is going. But by the middle, I was like, oh, no, this is not where this is going. But all that wandering and all that exploring gave me more idea about what I can do or what I would like to explore as a speaker. So a speech is this bridge between yourself and the audience, and you're going back and forth. And there's this a lovely communication that's going, but it's not always straightforward. So it's okay if you find it to be messy sometimes, if you're wandering around things, if you're exploring new ideas, that is absolutely okay. And all of the great things happen when we give ourselves chance to figure all of these things out. So that brings me to the end of today's session, and the floor is now open for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Alpha. That was really an enlightening session. I request all to please switch on their camera so that we can have a huge round of applause. Virtual applause, as they say in Toastmasters.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Now let's have some Q&As.
So anyone having any questions for Toastmasters Alpha, they are free to ask now.
Yeah, I have one question. Thank you, Alpha, for a great session. Actually, what happened, like in any speeches which I generally gave in the Toastmaster Club or in the professional life during the presentation. So sometimes this opening of the speech or the presentation, this question or the putting a question to a audience is useful, or it's always good to just start with a fact. I always confused with this.
Thank you for your question, Abhishek. So there is no one single answer to how you should start a speech, because it depends upon what kind of things you're speaking, how comfortable you are, the content of the speech as well. So you could start with a fact, and you could also start with a question. So either one of them could be right. It depends upon how you want to take your speech. So if you want to interact with the audience right at the start, if you think, if they reply back to you, then it kind of reinforces something that you want to explore, reinforces an idea, or it kind of takes an exploration of where you. Sometimes what happens is you want to flip the idea that you're speaking to the audience, like you're like, oh yeah, A is B, and then the audience will raise their hand and say, oh yeah, A is B, and then you're by the middle, you're like, no, A is not B, like A is C. So if you want to do that, you could also ask the question. So it depends upon a lot of different factors. So you can try both those methods with, like, you can try one method in one speech, and maybe you can try the same method in the other and see how it turns out for you. I hope that.
Thank you.
So anyone else? So I would like to ask one question. So what, according to you, are a few tips for ending a speech on a high note? Like whatever, I believe that whatever we are giving a speech, if it is not ended properly, so it misses a point, the impact the audience is looking for. So what tips you can give us so that we can end our speech on a high note?
Thank you, Vandana, for that question. The conclusions are something that I also struggle with. Sometimes I know how I'm going to start a speech, but I don't know how it's going to end. So ending a speech on a high note would be, it's probably the crux of your speech, the takeaway that you want to give. So it could be the message, but said in a very condensed way, something that the audience can remember, because the audience will probably remember the closing for a very long time, because even after you're gone, it's something that keeps lingering in their mind. So the most important thing about your speech, the thing that you really want the audience to take away, something that is the heart of the speech. But like the heart of the speech could be everything in the speech because they're all functioning together, but you have to choose something that you want the audience to remember after you have left the stage. So that's that could be a good way, that might be a good way to end the speech. And again, it's all about hit and trial. You can see how it works for you and how different it could be in some other speech. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much. So anyone else wants to ask?
Yeah, I want to ask one question.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, suppose we are speaking a quote, and in that, like, suppose we are speaking a quote, and while speaking a quote, should we speak that quote one time or two times?
I couldn't get you. Can you elaborate a bit?
Yeah. Suppose in beginning before speech we are speaking a quote, and uh, we are speaking that quote, and we have to speak that quote one time or two time for better understanding for speaker.
At the start?
Yeah, yeah, in starting.
So you mean, for example, if the quote is
Yeah. If a quote is in 2 or 3 lines.
in 2 or 3 lines. If
Yes.
it's a long quote,
Yes.
should you say it once or should you say it twice?
Yeah.
I think repeating a quote might cut down from your time. So you might want to think how you can say it at first in a way that the audience understands, because when you're repeating, it'll just, if you want to repeat, you might want to think how you can add value to it when you are repeating, because it's the same thing, right? Because like it's saying, okay, suppose the quote is A is B, for example, and you're again saying A is B, so you're just repeating the same thing. So if you want to repeat, maybe you could repeat it in the body or conclusion somewhere. And if the quote is too long and if it's going to take a long time for the audience to understand it, then maybe you can ask, is this the right quote? Because if you want to, it's absolutely okay to repeat things throughout your speech. But if you just want to repeat like at the start, just so the audience can understand, that might might want to think through it as to how you can make it more simple. Because if you're repeating, it doesn't add any like further value, right? Except that you wanting the audience to understand it. I hope that answers the question.
Yes.
So guys, any more questions from anyone?
Hi, Alpha. Hello.
Hi, yeah, okay.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for giving such a nice session on this content, and everything was very good. Just wanted to know, for example, I have one topic of spirituality, and the time limit is 2 to 3 minutes. So we know that we have to create one structure with opening, body, and closing. We can choose from certain alternatives, story, or antidotes. But what kind of message we can give for such kind of topic, for example, spirituality, so that within 2 to 3 minutes it can become impactful? So I'm still wondering, maybe only I am struggling with that kind of stuff, or any idea?
Thank you for that question, Anu. It's very difficult when you have a short time and then you want so many things to say. I think it's very, very challenging because and it kind of forces you to think the main idea, the main thing. Like there's nothing extra, there's nothing extra buffer or anything. It's just the main thing. So I wouldn't know what message to say, because I don't know what is it that you would like to speak about. That spirituality is a big topic, but you can think about the main thing that you want to say. It might be slightly difficult, because if you had a longer time frame, then you can build in a little bit of background, you can give it a little bit of context, and so and so. But if you have 2 to 3 minutes, it's like you just have to take the audience straight there in a way they can understand, because you're directly moving towards the action, so you don't have time to for that background information. So you
Maybe,
might want to think how.
maybe at the moment, what I am thinking that everyone knows the benefits of spirituality, but still because of certain reasons, we are going away from it. So somehow I want to give the message that why we should go towards spirituality and how we can go. So maybe I need to explore, but within 2 to 3 minutes, it becomes a little bit difficult for us.
Yeah, that's a challenge, and that's also the fun part. It forces you to think, what is the main thing? What can I take out so that my argument or my idea doesn't fall apart? So that's the interesting bit, and you can explore. Yeah, that's how we
Sure, sure,
go.
sure. Thank you once again, Alpha. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me as well.
So, Toastmaster Alpha, I've received a question in my personal chat. So, the question is how to ensure a smooth transition, like when you are giving an idea about something and then you want to transition your viewpoint to another. So, how do we ensure a smoother transition while giving a speech?
Transition from one point to another. Pauses are a very good way to transition. I just take a pause, and the audience kind of knows that something is going to happen because you've taken that pause. And they can also be transition words. These are general things. Transition words like however, so there's like grammatical stuff from the English language. You can also do movements. So you can move from one point to another along with that pause. And that will also kind of, when you move, audience will move with you. So you are taking the attention with you, which means something is going to happen. So you don't move in the middle of a sentence, right? You move when it's important. So that could also be another non-verbal way to make transitions between your idea from one to another. But it's also good to consider what kind of transition you're going to have. Is it going to be dramatic? Are you going to completely flip the thing that you're going to say? Or is it just moving from one idea, or just like stacking up your idea? So all of that could also kind of give you a little bit of idea as to how to spice up your speeches. That might help.
Thank you so much. So quickly, any more questions? Come on, people, this is your last chance.
Hello, Alpha. Hi. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Uh, one simple question that I would like to ask is it important to give that a lesson is learned, or you should leave to the audience that the lesson is learned? You can take away your own morals on your own, or you have to specify that the lesson is learned this like this. Is it really boring?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the question. That's an interesting one. How do we leave the audience? I think the lesson can be like implied. It might not always be overtly stated and said, okay, yeah, this is the message of it. But whenever you're implying the message, you might want to construct your story in such a way so that your audience is not lost. So they still have a direction. They still know where they're going, and they still can get the basic idea or the basic lesson that you wanted to share with them. It can come from examples, it can come from catchphrases, from facts that you're stating. So it might not always be necessary to like explicitly say this is the lesson. It might not be necessary to do that. It can also be done in a nicely, in a subtle way. But how are you going to do that? That would like be the area to explore. What kind of stories should you keep? How are you going to transition? What are the things that you're going to say? All of that will give a direction to your speech eventually.
Okay, and one more stuff that if you don't have any real life story, can you give an example of of other people of real life stories, uh, substitution for your own life experiences?
Uh, yeah, you can definitely share other people's story as well. But you can share it in such a way so that you are still there when you're listening to somebody else's story. It does make you feel something, right? It does. So you can also you can still participate in somebody else's story without directly being affected by that story. So you can, like, if you have someone who you really admire or look up to, and you're going to tell their story, you can also share how it made you feel, because you are still participating as, like, as the person who has seen that story, right? So you can also talk about the effect that it had on you. So that might kind of bring a connection, because if you're just saying somebody else's story, there might not be a direct connection with the audience. But if you are there, so you are still building a connection between the other person's story, you, and the audience in front of you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So with that, we have come to this point where we are closing this session now. Thank you so much, Toastmaster Alpha, for delivering this amazing session to all of us. Some people might have left, but yes, they have left taking a good amount of advice from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I've dropped in a link in the chat box. It's like a small feedback for me for the session today. It'll probably take only 2 minutes of your time. Please feel free to drop in.
Yes, sure. We'll circulate this link too.
Yeah, sure. That'd be nice. Thank you so much once again for having me. It was really nice chatting with everyone and listening to the